When I turned 20, my grandfather's old friend, the richest man in the country, laid out photos of his grandsons in front of me. He said, "Pick one to be your husband." Without a second of hesitation,
Il chose Nathaniel Chapman.
the entire room froze. Everyone knew I had always loved George Chapman, but had never been a secret. I once swore I would never marry anyone but him. In my past life, I got exactly what I wanted, George as my husband. And, because of that marriage, he inherited most of his grandfather's fortune. But after the wedding, he got entangled with my sister. Me parents were furious and sent her overseas. George thought I was the one who exposed them. From then on, he hated me. The women around him kept changing, but one thing stayed the same. They all looked disturbingly like my sister. Betrayal broke me. I fell into depression. Later, he switched my medicine with slow-acting poison. When I died, I was pregnant, lonely, devastated, and betrayed. Now I've been reborn. This time, let them have each other. What I didn't expect was that George had been reborn too. The moment I stepped out of Mr. Chapman's study, I ran into George and his cousins. They scattered, but not before throwing in a jab. Beatrice chasing George again. "Don't you ever get tired?" one sneered. George's cold eyes locked on me. "What are you doing here?" he demanded. "Freeing to use Grandpa to back you up again. Haven't you milked that hole? My grandfather saved him in the war story? Enough. You've humiliated me long enough. Whoever you marry, it doesn't matter. I am not interested." His voice stripped with disgust. Just like in my last life, my love had never been enough. I exhaled slowly. "This has nothing to do with you. Mr. Chapman invited me. He is hosting my birthday party tomorrow." Silence. His cousins froze. "What, he is throwing you a party?" I knew exactly why they were stunned. For years, the old man had avoided family affairs. If he was stepping in now, I meant this was more than just a party. He had once told me that on my 20th birthday, I had to choose a husband from the Chapman heirs. Whoever I chose would inherit most of his fortune and lead the family. The shock wore off and George's cousins turned to him with smirks.
Congrats, George.
"Looks like you're about to run the show. Don't forget us when you are in charge," another added. George sneered, then leaned close to me. "But to avoid another tragic ending like last time, you'll agree to one thing. Once we marry, we live separate lives. Stay out of my business. That is my only condition." His words shook me. How could he? Did he remember, too? Just then, a soft voice purred behind me. Beatrice, my sister, Isabella Layton, appeared in a mini dress.
Her smile shy.
Her cough delicate. George rushed to her side instantly. "You shouldn't be out if you are sick." "My dad insisted," he murmured, eyes lowered. He didn't want Beatrice coming alone. George clasped her hand and glared at me. "You are so selfish. Can't you see she is not well?" And then he pulled her away. As they walked off, George shot me a warning look. "Beatrice Layton, if you keep this up, I will never marry you." I couldn't help but laugh. 'Cause this time I was the one who had no intention of marrying him. It was my birthday party. Only after the elders had left did George finally show up with Isabella on his arm. Her cheeks were flushed, and there were obvious red marks on his neck. Anyone could guess what they'd just been doing. The old me would have broken down right there, crying and demanding answers.
How could they?
The man I loved and my own sister. Was my pain really that meaningless to them?
But now,
I just glanced at them and turned away to chat with other guests. George noticed my eyes linger on the mark, and immediately stepped in front of Isabella, shielding her. Minutes passed, and I still didn't make a scene. My silence started to bother him. Forcing a smile, he sneered, "Beatrice, are you pretending to be all sweet? Because you're scared I won't marry you?" He chuckled. "Well, good, good. I am about to become the head of the Chapman family. I won't ever love just one woman. But since you are being so understanding today, I'll give you a little reward." He pulled a small velvet box from, but before he could hand it to me, Isabella snatched it.
"Oh,
my God, this is gorgeous. Isn't this the limited edition bracelet from that luxury brand?"
it is impossible to get."
George pulled his hand back. "Do you like it, Bella? Then it is yours."
Sigh.
"Shouldn't it is Beatrice's birthday gift?" she said with a fake laugh, though her eyes stayed locked on me, full of smug triumph.
"Don't be silly. Take it."
"As for her, I'll find something else. She'll be happy with whatever I give her," George said, drawing a round of mocking chuckles. Memories crashed over me then. I once believed every gift from him was precious. One rainy holiday, he casually handed me his jacket hand. I treasured it for years until he caught me secretly smelling it. "How pathetic can you be?" he'd spat, shattering my teenage heart. Even when his father beat him for humiliating me, George only laughed and turned the story into a family joke. I was nothing but entertainment to them. Now the memory just made me feel sad. I turned to leave, but George blocked my way. What is wrong? Are you upset? I can't keep up the act anymore. I knew it. A vicious woman like you could never understand me. He grabbed my wrist.
I
Looked down at his hand, then yanked myself free. Mr. Chapman, show me some respect. He froze and scoffed. Respect for what? Haven't you been begging to marry me? We're about to move in together. So what is with the attitude? Who said I am going to marry you? I shot back. The room fell silent before bursting into laughter. And who else would have you? George smirked. You're obsessed with. Do you really think you can marry someone else besides? He added cruelly, the only eligible bachelor in my family is Nathaniel. But ever since his accident, his health's been terrible.
He is always sick.
No one even knows how much longer he'll live. I've even heard some of his abilities are gone. Do you really want to spend your life with a man who can't give you anything? The whole room fell silent. Everyone's eyes were on me, waiting for my answer. Just then, someone wheeled in Nathaniel Chapman.
He looked so sick, too weak to even stand.
The sight of him made the others exchange knowing smiles. I was about to announce that I would marry Nathaniel, but Mr. Chapman's words echoed in my mind. Since you've chosen Nathaniel, I'll respect your decision. But for now, say nothing. When the time is right, everyone will know. So I stayed quiet. Nathaniel stayed quiet too. His calm eyes met mine, but I caught a flicker of disappointment in them. I understood Mr. Chapman's concern. The family was huge, and everyone was hungry for his fortune. That was why I didn't bother arguing with George. I let them laugh and simply walked away. On the way home, I sat in the car with Isabella. She flicked her wrist proudly, diamonds flashing under the light.
Forcing me to squint.
Even if you marry George, so what? You'll never win his heart,
She said. To outsiders.
Isabella was the picture of sweetness, but in private, her real nature always showed. I couldn't help recalling my past life. When I walked in on her and bed with George, she trembled in his arms like a frightened child, and he shielded her from me as if I were the villain. I had fainted right then and there. After that scandal, my parents sent Isabella abroad. She later married a wealthy heir and lived far better than I ever did. But in this life, I'd already decided to hand George over to her. I wanted to see how far she could go. I smiled faintly. You are right. If I can't win his heart, what is the point of having him? I hope you grow up fast, marry him soon. I wish you both a lifetime of happiness. Isabella blinked, surprised. Then she raised her brows and laughed. You can pretend all you want.
But George loves me.
Soon, Thanksgiving arrived. My father asked me to bring a gift to Mr. Chapman. The moment I stepped into the Chapman estate, I ran into Isabella. She hadn't been home for days, and now she stood before me in a designer gown with matching jewels, oozing elegance. She gave me a smug smile. Beatrice, do you like my dress? George gave it to me. I told him I don't like flashy things, but he insisted. He said, only I deserve gifts like this. Angel flared in me. I tried to walk past, but she blocked my path. I just want to share my happiness with you,
She said.
tears welling up. Why are you so cold? I know you are jealous, but love can't be controlled. The moment she spoke, tears streamed down her face. I shoved her hand aside. To my shock, she collapsed onto the floor, crying even harder. Beatrice, how could you hit me? I am your sister. Just then, George stormed in, fury in his eyes. Beatrice Layton, what are you doing abusing your own sister? Do you even have a heart? I shifted my gaze from George to Isabella and let out a bitter laugh. Unbelievable. Isabella, so young, yet already the shameless. The words had barely left my mouth when George slapped me across the face. How dare you speak to Bella like that? He roared. My cheek burned with pain. I wanted to strike back, but the sight of guests nearby stopped me. I refused to ruin the Chapmans' Thanksgiving banquet, so I swallowed my rage and glared at them instead. That was when I saw the triumphant smile on Isabella's face. Realizing he had gone too far, George reached for me, but Isabella clung to him first, clutching him tightly. George, I think something flew into my eye. Can you check? She whimpered. By then, passing guests were already whispering. Isn't that the Layton's eldest daughter? Fighting her own sister over a man? What a disgrace. George's face twisted and disgust. Beatrice apologized to Bella. Right now, how could I ever be with someone like you? You are pathetic. Behind George, the Chapman cousins tried to hold back their laughter. Miss Layton, this won't work if you can't even handle your own sister. What happens when George gets close to another woman? One of them sneered, and another chuckled. Didn't she literally learn taekwondo just to fight off any girl who wanted him? The memory made my skin crawl. George stepped toward me, his voice dripping with contempt. Grandfather announced our engagement today. If you really want to marry me, remember what I told you after the wedding. We live our own lives. Don't meddle in my business. That is the only way I'll forgive your spite and unbearable temper." I stared at him in disbelief. But how could a man so well educated say something so outrageous, mistaking my silence for agreement? He smirked. "As long as you obey me, I promise you won't be humiliated." He was certain I'd never marry anyone but him. The room went still, everyone watching like it was a show. Suddenly the sound of footsteps echoed from inside the house. Mr. Chapman Sr.'s assistant, Isaac Brown, stepped out. The sound of Isaac Brown's footsteps was sharp, rhythmic, and silencing. He stopped beside me, his face impassive, holding a document sealed with the Chapman wax crest. "Mr. George," Isaac said, his voice devoid of emotion, "the chairman requests your silence." George frowned, his arrogance faltering for a split second before returning. "Isaac, tell grandfather I'm handling a domestic dispute. Beatrice is just throwing a tantrum because—" "Miss Layton," Isaac interrupted, turning his back on George to face me. He bowed slightly. "The chairman is waiting for your answer. He asks if you have made your final decision regarding the engagement." The room held its breath. George crossed his arms, a smirk playing on his lips. "Go on, Beatrice. Tell Isaac you accept my terms. Tell him you'll be a good little wife and stay out of my way." Isabella giggled beside him, feigning a whisper. "Don't be too hard on her, George. She's desperate." I looked at George. I looked at the bruise forming on my cheek where he had slapped me. Then, I looked past him, toward the corner of the room where Nathaniel sat in his wheelchair. He was pale, his eyes closed as if the mere noise of the party was exhausting him. But his hands, resting on his lap, were steady. I walked past George. "Beatrice?" George barked. "Where are you going?" I didn't stop until I stood in front of the wheelchair. I crouched down, ignoring the collective gasp of the crowd, until I was eye level with Nathaniel. "Nathaniel," I said softly. He opened his eyes. They were dark, deep pools of intelligence that contradicted his frail body. He looked at me with a mixture of curiosity and warning. "Miss Layton," he rasped, his voice rough from disuse. "Do you know what you are doing?"
"I don't," he whispered.
Then I stood up, turned to Isaac, and spoke clearly enough for the entire estate to hear. "Mr. Brown, please inform the chairman that I have made my choice. I will not be marrying George Chapman." George let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. "Stop playing games. If not me, then who? The gardener?" I pointed at the man in the wheelchair. "I choose Nathaniel Chapman." The silence that followed was absolute. It was heavier than the silence before. George's face went slack. Isabella's jaw dropped. "Are you insane?" George finally shouted, stepping forward. "Him? Look at him. He's a cripple. He's a corpse warming a seat. You'd rather marry a dying man than me?" "I would rather marry a dead man than you," I said coldly. Isaac Brown nodded solemnly. "Very well." The chairman expected this might happen. He pulled a second document from his portfolio. "Per the chairman's previous decree, the grandson chosen by Miss Layton will immediately receive the transfer of the downtown commercial district shares and the ancestral estate. Congratulations, Mr. Nathaniel." George's face turned a violent shade of purple. "What?"
"No."
"That's my inheritance. Grandfather promised me." "He promised the husband of Miss Layton," Isaac corrected. "He never promised it was you." Nathaniel finally moved. He raised a hand, and his assistant immediately stepped forward to push his chair. As he rolled past a stunned George, Nathaniel paused. He didn't look up, but his voice carried a chilling, unexpected authority. "George," Nathaniel said quietly, "step aside. You're blocking my fiancé." The engagement was the scandal of the year. The prince of the city, rejected for the invalid of the Chapman family. We were married a month later in a quiet, private ceremony. There were no grand speeches, no media. Just a contract signed in grandfather's study. That night, in Nathaniel's wing of the estate, a place rumored to smell of medicine and death, I prepared myself for a sexless, quiet marriage. I had chosen him for protection, not passion. I needed a shield while I built my own empire to crush George and Isabella. I walked into the master bedroom. It was dark, lit only by a fireplace. Nathaniel was sitting in an armchair, not his wheelchair. He was reading a book, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He looked up. The frailty I had seen at the party was different. He still looked pale, but the weakness in his posture was gone. "You can stop holding your breath," he said, closing the book. "I'm not going to die on you tonight." I wasn't worried. I lied, clutching my silk robe tighter. "You're a terrible liar, Beatrice." He stood up. My breath hitched. He stood effortlessly. He was tall, taller than George. He walked toward me with a predator's grace, no limp, no struggle. You can walk," I stammered. "I can do many things," he said, stopping inches from me. "Grandfather knows." The public doesn't. And now, you know. Why hide it? Because in this family, the strong are targeted. The weak are ignored. He leaned down, his voice dropping to a whisper near my ear. You chose the cripple because you thought I was safe. You thought you could control me. My heart hammered against my ribs. I chose you because you were the only one who didn't look at me like I was a piece of meat or a joke. Nathaniel pulled back, studying my face. For the first time, I saw something other than calculation in his eyes. I saw recognition. Fair enough, he murmured. We have a common enemy, Beatrice. George thinks he's the son. I intend to snuff him out. Are we partners? I straightened my spine. Partners.
Good.
He walked back to the chair. Take the bed. I'll sleep in the study. Until we've destroyed them, we don't have time for distractions. Over the next year, the dynamic of the Chapman family shifted in invisible ways. George, furious at losing the prime inheritance, became reckless. He launched aggressive business acquisitions to prove his worth. Isabella, now officially his girlfriend, played the part of the supportive partner, but I knew better. I saw the way she looked at the luxury cars, the mansions, the credit card limits. She loved the money, not the man. I started my own venture, a boutique investment firm, using the allowance grandfather gave me. With my knowledge of future market trends from my past life, I made a fortune. I didn't hide it. I wanted George to see. Thanksgiving came around again. The atmosphere was toxic. George had been drinking heavily. His latest project, a tech startup he'd poured millions into, was failing. What he didn't know was that the anonymous investor who had shorted his stock was me. Look at her. George sneered across the dinner table, pointing his fork at me. Playing businesswoman. Tell me, Beatrice, does the cripple satisfy you? Or do you sneak out at night? Isabella laughed, placing a hand on George's arm. George, don't be mean. Maybe Nathaniel just watches. Grandfather Chapman, now bedridden and frail, was not present. The wolves were unchained. I wiped my mouth with a napkin and smiled. Actually, George, Nathaniel is quite capable. But I'm surprised you have the energy to worry about my bedroom life. Shouldn't you be worried about the audit coming for Chapman Enterprises? George froze. What audit? The one regarding the embezzlement of funds to pay for Isabella's gambling debts in Monaco. Isabella turned pale. That's a lie. Is it? I reached into my purse and slid a folder across the long table. It stopped right in front of George. He opened it. Photos of Isabella at high-stakes tables. Bank transfer records from his company accounts to unknown offshore shells. George looked at Isabella. You told me you were visiting your sick aunt. George, let me explain. She's faking it. Isabella shrieked. And I added calmly, the slow-acting poison found in grandfather's tea. The police are testing the residue found in your handbag, Isabella. The room erupted. This was the trap I had been laying for months. In my past life, George had poisoned me. In this life, Isabella had tried to hasten the old man's death to get the rest of the inheritance for George before he went bankrupt. I had simply installed cameras. Isaac Brown stepped out of the shadows, accompanied by 2 uniformed officers. Isabella Layton, Isaac said. Please come with us. George, help me. Isabella screamed, clinging to him. George shoved her away. The look on his face wasn't heartbreak, it was self-preservation. Get off me. You stole from me? You tried to kill grandfather? I did it for us, she wailed as the officers handcuffed her. As she was dragged away, I watched George. He didn't look at her.
He looked at me.
And in his eyes, I saw the dawning realization of just how badly he had underestimated me. Isabella's arrest destroyed George's reputation, but he wasn't finished. He was a Chapman. He still had allies on the board. 2 months later, grandfather passed away. The reading of the will was the final battlefield. The entire extended family gathered in the great library. George sat alone, looking haggard but determined. He believed that with Isabella gone and his bloodline claim, he could challenge the will. The lawyer began reading. To my eldest grandson, George. George sat up straighter. I leave the sum of $1 and the advice to learn humility. George leaped to his feet. This is a joke. He was senile. To my grandson Nathaniel, the lawyer continued, ignoring the outburst, I leave the entirety of the Chapman Empire, including all remaining assets, stocks, and the role of chairman of the board. Furthermore, the lawyer paused. It is noted that Nathaniel Chapman has been managing the family's shadow assets for the past 5 years under the alias Orion. The prosperity we have enjoyed is due to his hand. George staggered back. Orion? The investor group that just bought out my debt? That's you? He turned to Nathaniel. Nathaniel was sitting in his wheelchair. He looked at George, then slowly, deliberately, he stood up. Gasps filled the room. Nathaniel buttoned his suit jacket, standing at his full height, towering over the room. You? George whispered. You can walk. I've been running this family while you were busy chasing skirts and buying yachts, Nathaniel said, his voice deep and resonant. You didn't lose your inheritance, George. You never earned it. Nathaniel turned to me and held out his hand. Shall we, Mrs. Chapman? I placed my hand in his. It was warm and strong. We shall. George was ruined. The board ousted him immediately. His assets were seized to pay off the debts he had accrued trying to compete with Nathaniel. I went to see him one last time, 3 months later. He was living in a cramped apartment on the outskirts of the city, the only place he could afford. When he opened the door, he looked 10 years older. Unshaven, smelling of cheap beer. Came to gloat, he spat. No, I said. I came to give you this. I handed him a small box. He opened it. It was the bracelet, the limited edition one he had given Isabella on my birthday in my past life, and again in this one. I had bought it from the police auction of Isabella's seized goods. You bought it back? He asked, confused. I don't want it, I said. I just wanted you to remember that everything you lost because you couldn't value what was right in front of you. You chose the fake sister. You chose the fake life. Beatrice. He stepped forward, a flicker of that old desperation in his eyes. I made a mistake. We can start over. I know you still love me. You did all this to get my attention, right? I laughed. It was a light, free sound. George, I did this to survive you. I walked away. Behind me, I heard him calling my name, but the sound was faint, like a ghost from a bad dream. I walked out of the building to where a black Bentley was waiting. The rain was falling softly, but I didn't get wet. Nathaniel was there, holding an umbrella over me before I even reached the curb. Done, he asked.
Done, I said.
He didn't ask for details. He simply opened the car door for me. As he settled in beside me, he took my hand. Over the past few months, the partnership had shifted. The walls had come down. Where to? The driver asked. Home, Nathaniel said. Then he looked at me, his thumb brushing over my knuckles. Unless you want to go somewhere else? Paris? Tokyo? We have the jet. I rested my head on his shoulder. Home is fine, as long as you're there. Nathaniel kissed the top of my head. I'm not going anywhere. I waited a lifetime to find someone who could see me. I'm not letting you go. I closed my eyes, listening to the rain against the glass. In my past life, I died cold, alone, and betrayed. In this life, I was warm, powerful, and loved. The revenge was sweet. But the peace? The peace was everything.